record. Yeah, okay, I'm good.
Okay, Jimmy, am I giving you also any type of permission? Are you going to take over the screen, or am I going to do it all for you?
I think you were going to do it all. We did a dry run, Grant,
Okay.
Marcel and I this morning. So Marcel will be running all the slides and the video. This way it's easier, so
Okay.
I can talk and
Perfect.
we'll set up. So we're good to go.
You let me know when you're ready, and I'll start recording.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Okay.
And looks like we're on.
Good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have a very special presentation today. I have with me Marcel Vidovic and Jimmy Blanchette. And I first heard about this story a couple of years back. I did a book called Contact Modalities, where I talk about different modalities to interact with whatever's on the other side of the field. Like if you rip the veil and you're over there, dead people, ETs, whatever. And one of the things I heard about, because the Canadians in the early years from 1950 to 1954, the Canadian Flying Saucer program was run by a guy by the name of Wilbert Brockhouse Smith. He was the top radio engineer for the Department of Transport in Canada, the top radio engineer in Canada, had run what was called Radio Ottawa, which is where they're trying to pick off communications with the Russians. They had all the latest radio technology. And Wilbert Smith spent a lot of time trying to interact with aliens, ETs, using radio technology. He'd built a lot of technology. His wife told me he had 36 patents, all with radio technology, which was put into planes at the Department of Transport and stuff like that. The government stole all the patents. They took all the patents and saying that he was working for the government. So I had always known that this radio thing of learning to make contacts with whatever this the intelligence beyond the UFO phenomena is was very important. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to Marcel, and Marcel told me that there was some guys with radios. And he told me some stories about they had these contacts and the radios would light up. They'd say, okay, it's going to happen. And suddenly the radios in Wisconsin or wherever this event was would start going off. And I go like, wow. So I put it in contact modalities, but I just basically said there's this technology I've heard about. And I really haven't, they're not ready to go public yet. And now they're ready to go public. So I've got the I got the main guy who sort of developed this, Jimmy Blanchette, is on here, and Marcel, who told me about it. So I'll maybe turn it over to Marcel, and you can set up what this is. It's called the CE6 Initiative, correct?
Yeah, the CE6 Initiative is more of a global contact movement. The radios is part of it. I mean, we're trying to promote that. But really, this is about radio communication, establishing your own personal communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. That's basically the gist of it. Even though we've been, for those experiences who've been in contact with extraterrestrial interdimensional beings, they don't have the instrumentation or have limited instrumentation as far as being able to have a physical, verifiable contact. In other words, we've used tri-field meters in the past and so on. What Jimmy has developed is actually almost like a, to make it simplified, almost like a walkie-talkie, a transmission between you using thought, consciousness, intent, and communicating with extraterrestrials or non-human intelligence and getting a response back. So it's validated, and he's pioneered this a few years ago. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to him via the social channels, and he's the one that got us started with this. So I immediately added to my arsenal of technology the radios, and it's been, I would say, one of the most incredible experience and trip that I've had since I started making contact over the last few years. And most of it, thanks to Jimmy, because he's really pioneered this. And I've known, I met Jimmy in 2018, and we became really good friends. And a small group of us have been working with the radios for the last few years. And we had no idea how far this would go, and every day is a new experience. And I'll let Jimmy share a lot of the nuances to what's been happening over the last few years.
Just before we go to Jimmy, just sort of give a little bit of your background. You're actually like a technical guy. You've done a lot of filming, photographs. You've got a lot of stuff, and you've worked with different C5 groups like Stephen Greer, and you've done your own stuff around the world. That you're pretty knowledgeable about the technology angle to this thing.
I have actually, Grant, been really fortunate in the fact that I somehow been allowed to capture a lot of the activity. And yes, I started with Dr. Greer. My first expedition was in 2015 in Vero Beach, Florida, where we had the massive twin ships appear. Prior to that, I had an interest. I've always had an interest since I was in high school on UFO and extraterrestrials, but it wasn't, and read a lot of books on it, but it really wasn't until 2015 where I actually took the plunge, so to speak, and went to an event and experienced contact using consciousness. And for me, what an experience to have these massive ships up here in Vero Beach. So to me, that was my pivotal point. That's where it started all. After that, I joined a local group here, which I co-run here in Michigan, and we're up to over 100 members where we do CE5 events a few times a year. I also joined an international team where I've done work in New Zealand and other places, and had an experience with full contact with extraterrestrials in New Zealand, little light beings, which was just an incredible moment for me. And also, as we discussed in the past, I had contact in Mount Shasta with other beings, which was also a pivotal point in my life. But that said, when we're having our CE5 events, whether it's a 2-person event, which I've done several, I've gone out by myself, but even as a 2-person event or a 30-person event, for some reason, I get some communication. Something tells me to point my camera in a certain direction, and it's at that moment that there's something that comes, into the camera lens, and I've recorded and had photographs, literally probably now in the hundreds, and I can't tell you how many hours of video photographs or video that I have on crafts and other anomalies that have occurred, which I probably only went through maybe 30 to 40% of it. So.
Now, when I first saw when I saw the presentation Jimmy had done about a month or 2 months ago, I was pretty excited. I thought this was like pretty revolutionary stuff. And so, describe to me, do you think this is really, really significant stuff in terms of, like, you've got the photographs? What kind of impact do you think this is going to have in terms of? Because to me, I was just blown away when I saw it. I thought, wow. I mean, how do people not know about this?
Yeah. Well, I think it's huge. I think it's huge because we've all had some type of contact, and I come from a scientific background. I need to analyze, I need to validate things, and we're being communicated at all times. But if we're busy with our scientific mind, and we're busy with our everyday life, you don't really pick up on the communication that's being given to you. I mean, we're getting messages all the time and so on. The radio is a tool in which the scientific mind, it doesn't have to be the scientific mind, but for the scientific person, it's actually now a physical device that when they're setting the intent and doing the communication and sending the audio signals out, before they would get a response, but they might not recognize that response because it's a response. It might be a feeling, a thought. Here, now there's a device that's actually has sound, and it has a frequency to it. So now you're saying, wow, I just sent something out, whether it was, via a telepathic message, or whether it was a audio sound, or Morse code sound, and all of a sudden I'm getting response immediately, even though your radio might have been quiet for weeks prior to that. As soon as the message goes out, you're getting a reception. And if you have multiple radios, each one is being interacted individually. It's not like they're both doing the same thing, which now for the scientific mind, they're saying, wow, there's something to it. So now you have a tool to help you discern that there's some type of communication going on. So to me, it's huge. I've used the tri-field meters in the past. I now use my feeling and my telepathy more than I do the instruments, but having the instruments as a backup is also for validation is really important.
Okay. So let's get to Jimmy, and let's start this this presentation and get other people excited about this.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So first, thank you so much, Grant, for providing this platform to share this information. I think it's important. So thank you very much. So and thank you, Marcel, for joining and help me out on this. So yeah, we have a PowerPoint presentation. So we will go through pretty good details about the technique itself, how it works, and kind of demystify the technological aspect of it and physics aspect of it. We have also a short video we'll go through to give some visual to the audience. So we'll do that. So I started in, and maybe Marcel, I don't know if it's a good time to put on the first slide.
Sure. Let me share the screen and let me.
Yep. And then the screen, you got to click the little audio thing on the bottom, and there's two little things to share on the bottom there.
Okay, let me just double check that I have. Can you hear me okay? Is the sound coming through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just go to the PowerPoint and we'll get that started. Okay. So you're in control, Jimmy.
Excellent. You mentioned, Grant, earlier, breaking the veil. That's funny because that's part of the title of this presentation. So it's really poking a hole through the veil. Absolutely, that's what it is. Next slide, Marcel. So we're talking about, obviously, a communication with non-human intelligences using electromagnetic radio wave. So really, the primary objective of this is, to share and deploy this contact modality and make it known, make it available to the folks out there so they can have their own first contact experience. When I mean by first contact, it's not necessarily only open first contact with the world and see big ships showing up. I'm talking about really individual having the opportunity to have their own first contact experience, their own personal experience. This is really, I want to point out from the beginning, this contact modality is really a technological aid. That's the way I'm looking at it. It's the technological aid to assist our consciousness, into communicating with non-human intelligences. At the end of the day, consciousness is really what's driving this phenomenon. There's no doubt about that. And we'll see later on, we'll have discussions about it. Once you establish your first contact and your relationship, that relationship will keep growing. It will grow tremendously on the consciousness level, really.
Okay.
So it's very helpful to have an introduction at this first contact to make that initial communication that will then grow. All right, maybe go to the next slide, Marcel. Okay, so a brief history a bit here, how this all started. I have been, maybe some of my background, I'm a chemist by education, from Quebec, Canada, from the French province of Quebec, Canada. So that's why I have a thick accent. I apologize for it. I moved to the United States in 2002. I've been a radio kind of engineer, involved in radio communication since the age of 12, literally. I've been building antennas all my life and had a lot of fun, with this technology. Anyway, fast forward to 2013, I became interested in a modality called moon-bound communication. Marcel, you want to go to the next slide? So in 2013, I had heard about it, and I had never heard of that modality before. And this contact modality, really, it's used by the amateur radio community, but a very, very small segment. There are just not many people in the world who do that because it requires, very powerful, very sophisticated equipment. And the moon-bound communication consists in literally using the moon as a passive reflector. And so with the right equipment, with enough power, one can literally beam powerful beams of radio wave and have these beams of radio wave bounce off the surface of the moon, and the front wave comes back towards Earth. And that allows to establish a two-way communication between two radio stations. The technical challenge is astronomical. We're talking about over nearly 500,000 miles in terms of distance for the round trip. And the technique requires very sophisticated equipment, expensive equipment, and literally, from the amateur radio side of it, the signal that comes back from the moon are so weak that most of them are not even audible with the human ear. Most of these signals are 100 to 1,000 times weaker than the background noise, and so these signals are literally buried in the background noise. But with today's technology, the computer and so forth, it's possible to literally extract this very weak signal of the background and have a decode and have a communication with other stations on the planet this way. So that was the interest. Maybe go back to one slide, Marcel, go back by one slide. So that really was my goal initially, and I heard about this contact modality, so I started building antennas. I said, there's no way that I'm going to let that fly. I need to try this. That's too cool. I need to try this contact modality. So that's how it started from a technical aspect. And I started building antennas. So we see here from 2014 to 16, I worked on a system called TARP, or triangular, which stands for Triangular Array Rotatable Polarity Antenna, which we see here on the right side of the screen. That's the model I developed. Interestingly, I do have a funny story about this antenna. So the way that this antenna design came to mind, at the time I was at the beach on a long chair, and this model just popped up in my mind, just like a download, if you will. So I said, wow, this is unusual, but I was very curious about this model. So I just ended up jumping off my chair and running to my hotel room. I had my computer and I started modeling this antenna design. I do have specialized software to model, antennas of various configurations, and then the model essentially spits out what the electromagnetic radiation pattern is going to be. And when I modeled this antenna, I was stunned because it produced really a very pure radiation pattern that could not be achieved with other configurations. So this triangular configuration really, again, as just like that. And that's how I ended up, if you forward Marcel by 2 slides. So I ended up writing 2 scientific papers about this antenna system. One was published in December 2016. The paper were published in a magazine, a very specialized magazine for radio amateur, Radio Amateur magazine, about VHF, UHF, and microwave. And I published also a follow-up paper in Q2 2017 about TARP. We see here to the right side, that's the actual magazine. I was fortunate enough that the antenna made the cover page of that magazine actually at the time. All that is homemade. Obviously, it's you can't buy this equipment at Walmart. It's all very kind of homemade, and you need to concoct or put all these pieces together, to come up with the system. So that's how it came about. Maybe Marcel, come back 2 slides. Go back to the summary here. Okay. So this is how it started. So this was the 2014-2016 timeframe. That's where I spent a lot of time working on the systems. And I do have a website, www.kk6fah.com, which is my kind of amateur radio website, and all the details, technical details about this antenna system and performance are there with a lot of different videos. 2015, I did have a very significant experience, mystical experience at the time that I probably is relevant to the story that I'll take maybe a couple of minutes sharing. So I had 2015 a guided meditation, and the lady conducting the guided meditation invited me to imagine a light table made of light, and the next thing that happened that she proposed to invite my guides to that table, to that light table. And so so I went along with the exercise, went along with with what was proposed, and surprisingly there were 3 beings that showed up at that light table. One was very, very tall, very bright, kind of a light being. There were 2 other beings of different configuration that looked more ETs, to be honest, than guides. But anyway, that's what showed up there. And then the next thing that happened, the person guiding the meditation essentially asked me to ask the question about what was my purpose on this planet in this incarnation. So I started formulating this question to them, as it was suggested, and the answer that came back was surprising to me. And the answer was that it says, this being said, you already know what your purpose is. Why are you asking? Wow. And then the thing that came up immediately after were these 2 words that showed up in front of me: first contact, like, engraved in rock, if you will. It just boom, just appeared in front of me. Wow. And that was just like boom, right? Really, a big hit. And at that precise moment, I had the absolute certainty also that this antenna system I was working on will have something to do with it. It's just the feeling I had. It was a feeling. Now, at the time, I was not into contact work yet. It was 2015. I had not started any contact work. So this experience was, I was a bit struggling, quite honestly, with it, to understand, first of all, what first contact meant. There may be really different views of what that means. And also, I said, probably just imagine that. So I just moved on, put it in my kind of back pocket, of experience, and, went along with it. So it's just only really later on that I realized, what took place there. But anyway, so this was a significant experience at the
Had you
time.
had any experiences, say, as a child, maybe if they're not even UFO experiences, like mystical experiences that would indicate some?
Yes.
Or did you? I mean, yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, from my childhood, I've had many out-of-body experiences,
Okay.
sleep paralysis, and probably the most significant experience I had that I still remember very, very precisely. It was in Quebec. Actually, I was in a small house, in my small house in Quebec, Canada, and that morning I was face down on my mattress, paralyzed. I could not move, but I was completely, fully awake and aware. And I was terrified. I could hear movement around me, around my bed, like beings, if you will. At the time, I thought maybe it's like somebody, like a burglar that came in, is just there, right? But I could not move to even look at what was going on. So there were presence, let's put it this way, around me, and I couldn't move. I was terrified because I couldn't move. So that one, I was very awake and aware of it, and I fully remember that one, and many other out-of-body experiences throughout my life.
Okay.
Hey, Jimmy, what's really fascinating, that 2015, when you had your mystical experience, which is ironically the same year that I experienced my Vero Beach experience, that was a turning point in my life. And prior to that, I had similar out-of-body experience in the paralysis. Paralysis was really a big thing for me. It scared the heck out of me because I couldn't understand it. But the turning point in my life was in 2015, which appears to be similar, your starting point of now taking something scientific and having this experience, which is
that's right. Ironic. That's right. It's very ironic, good coincidence, and yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So, and then okay, and then we get into the 2017 timeframe. So, 2017, I became interested in CE5. I had heard about it. I had seen videos on the web about it, and I was intrigued. I was always a believer. I mean, from my childhood, I knew there was no way in the world we were alone. The probability of being alone was zero for me. And so I was always kind of, in a way, always, I always felt connected to the universe. I was always fascinated by astrophysics, astronomy. I took courses in these disciplines. I was always felt connected. So to me, the ET presence on Earth was a given, and I had, read, books about it and so forth. So, but I became interested, and I said, why not trying this? And I know there was at the time, the degree was giving a one evening presentation at Contact in the Desert. It was, I believe, towards the end of May 2017, and so I said, wow, okay, so I'm gonna go there, right? I have never gone to a UFO conference in my life.
Yeah.
And so, this was, a new world to me. And so I said, okay, let's try it. I will go there to that evening and see what it is, and so forth. So, but in preparation for this, I wanted to kind of prep the ground. And I heard people were putting groups together to do CE5 contact work and so forth. So I said, I will, why not starting my kind of own group and start something myself here in California. And so that's how it started. And so I started working on it, and naturally the idea came to me to use this technology that I had been working on for many years, this capability to assist me, if you will, as a technological aid for this CE5 work. It just made sense. So I ended up creating binary code message using my own kind of algorithm here. I had located the site in Los Padres National Park near Rose Valley, in Los Padres National Park. And so I had located a site there on Google Map, actually. And I said, okay, I will go there to scout that location on May 1st, 2017. But before going there, I'm going to broadcast the invitation message that I had put together, the binary code message. And so maybe, Marcel, if you go to the 3 more slides. One more. Okay. So, okay, go back by 1. So I had created my binary code message in which I I had indicated the latitude, longitude, time, and date, and a very brief message, essentially, to invite, if there were 80 civilizations out there, to meet me at that location at date and time.
Right.
And so I ended up, yes, go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing when you said that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so it's a bit like what we see in movies in a sense, right? But anyway, so I ended up putting this message together and encoding each lines with very specific frequencies, and we'll see some of it more in the video later on. And I broadcasted this message at full power using 150,000 watts of power, broadcasted it throughout the solar system. And, at that power, literally the radio wave will physically reach the targets that, I was aiming at. So I broadcasted toward all the planets of the solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, all of them, including the moon and the sun.
Let me ask you a question, because I think you shot it towards Ganymede as well. Didn't I hear you talk about it? And that was because of the Mission Rama people talking about Ganymede being a...
Yes, I was aware that there was a connection between the Rama community and the moon of Ganymede. Ganymede is just one of the, I believe, 67 moons of Jupiter. So, by aiming at Jupiter, I was able to capture all the moons around Jupiter. Similarly with Saturn, Saturn has a large number of moons. I have the number here actually. So, Jupiter has 67 moons and Saturn has 61 moons.
Wow.
I'm talking about a lot of bodies out there. Uranus has 27 moons and Neptune has 13, Mars has 2, and Earth has 1. So I essentially broadcasted and to reach, the signal physically reach all these planetary bodies and the moon, including the sun. And so I broadcasted that days prior going to the site. Marcel, you want to maybe play that video? So this is a real extract of the binary code message, how it sounded like and what I broadcasted. So it's a short video of 30 seconds. Marcel will play it right now.
I have a lot of videos, so give me 1 sec. And what's that one titled? Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Okay.
I think you need to share your audio, Marcel. Don't forget to activate. You need to activate the share audio. You need to share your audio and Zoom to capture the audio. We don't hear the audio right now.
Oh, sorry. Share sound. Okay, let's see if that's any better.
Okay.
Are you getting it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is the message that was broadcasted. Again, very homemade binary code message, but nothing to lose. So broadcasted that, and then May 1st, 2017, I end up going to that site. I was by myself. This was more to scout the site, to screen it, see if it was a viable site for future contact work with a group, with at the time I intended to put together. Next slide, Marcel. I think you are going to have to go through next. I think you have to forward by about 5 slides to the brief history, first contact established. Yeah, next one. Okay, this one. Here we go. So I ended up going to the contact site that night, and it was a beautiful place. There was a small lake called the Lower Lake. And I was just essentially sitting next to the lake, and it was a perfect place, not too much light pollution. So I said, okay, that's perfect site. And then after a while, I ended up, sitting in a chair and then sitting in the chair and said, why not try to meditate a little bit and just relax, right? Try to enjoy the scene here. I had brought with me at the time my small handheld radio, which we'll see in the video shortly, which was set to the same frequency that I had used to broadcast the message with the large radio station at my home, right? And so I had put the radio, remember, on the rooftop of my car, and I was, sat in my chair for 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, the radio started behaving in a way that it had never behaved before. I had used this radio for many months to do satellite communication and all kind of other communication. I had carried on that radio on me, clipped on my belt, and the radio had never, ever acted this way before. So they started, and Marcel, you may want to play that video here, which is this video is not the actual video of May 1st because I didn't record it at the time, but it's a video I took a few days after, which is a perfect representation of the interaction I had on my day of first contact, if you will, on May 1st.
That one's called
yes, that's
this one here.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
So this let me just.
It's 2:16 in the morning. The radio is very active right now.
All right, so this is a good representation of the interaction I had on May 1st, 2017. At the time when the radio started behaving this way, on the moment I almost got annoyed because it was, I was trying to relax here and the radio was acting up, and I didn't make the connection at all, by the way. It's not the way I operate. I'm a scientist. I try, there's no way I would have concluded that this was an ET reply before having done all the homework to eliminate all possibilities of false positives. And I had never seen the radio behave this way, but I thought to myself, it was pretty cold outside. It was getting chilly. I said, maybe the electronic is being affected by the temperature, or there's something going on. But, I didn't make the connection at all. So anyway, after some time, I decided to pack up everything and go back home, very satisfied with the site that I had located there for future contact work. But I was very puzzled by this radio behaving this way. And so the next several days, I ended up carrying the radio on me all the time. So I said, look, if the radio is being triggered by something in the middle of a national park where there's no cell signal, it's far remote, far from everything, far from all human installations, I assume that the radio will do even more interaction if I keep it on me and go to the, in town and at the bank and the grocery store, right? If it's being triggered by some kind of interference or something, it should happen in city. So I ended up carrying the radio on me for many days, and the radio was completely silent. It was not doing anything. So I ended up going back to the site several days later, 2 weeks later, and then to kind of, same way, I rebroadcasted an invitation message to, for that specific date and time. I had a friend with me at the time who came, and then again, we got set up there, and shortly after our arrival, the radio started going off again. And then I started making, connecting the dots. And I had, by the way, in the days prior, I forgot to mention, I had tried to replicate these interactions, using my large radio station here. I was blasting powerful, I was making powerful transmissions to see if that will trigger the radio. I tried to replicate this interaction. It was not possible to replicate this interaction. In any case, so I went back to the site again. After getting set up there, the radio started interacting again, and became very obvious at this point that there was interaction. We were talking, there was interaction back. So it really felt like there was something behind this. There was something behind this phenomenon that was intelligent. There was an intelligence behind these replies. So this is really how it started for me. And then I continued from there. I mean, for the many weeks and months that followed, I continued doing the technical work to explore and, to understand more how this whole contact modality works. But this is how it started. So I ended up from there, I continued creating messages, and I was going there for almost every weekend at that point to experience and to try it. So this is how it started. And then, I mean, very shortly after these experience with the radio itself, I started having sightings, right? And having flashes in front of me and all kind of paranormal phenomena, which really started. And so this is how it started.
Can I ask at this point, like in the first 10 incidences, was it like every time that, was there a very definite pattern that this was happening every time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was absolutely happening every time. And after that, it was not only happening at that location, it was happening at my own home, you know, in the backyard. And so it followed me. And that's where this relationship, if you will, that was, you know, beginning at that point, just started to grow from there.
I have a question for you, Jimmy. You said that you went to Contact in the Desert when Dr. Guri did that one night event. By the way, which I was there. I was on stage with him along with Ricky Butterfest and Lyra, because we were volunteering. I guess you were in the audience, but did you bring your radio to that event? Did you already start using it?
Absolutely. So yes, there's something funny about that story. So I ended up going to that event that you know, that's what actually I was trying to warm myself up to go to. So I ended up going there. I brought a radio, the same radio that had interacted there, and shortly after Dr. Greer started the presentation, the radio started going off like crazy again. So I knew that, you know, by that time, I knew what was going on. And I thought to myself, maybe should I just stand up and show my radio? You know, hey, we're having contact here. But, you know, I just stayed quiet. I'm pretty shy by nature, so I stayed quiet.
But was your volume up? Were people around you saying, why do you have that radio going crazy or not?
Well, I kept it pretty silent. I didn't want to interfere with the presentation, obviously, but I was very excited. I knew what was happening. And so I said, holy cow.
Which is interesting, because you'll discuss it, and I'll add to that as well. Is it's amazing when you have that intent, how the radios react. Even if you have questions, they will react with some type of response. What's funny is I didn't know you then, but yet we're probably very close to each other. Because you were
yes, absolutely. We were close to each other. We didn't know.
That's really funny.
That's very funny. So yeah, so this is how it started, and I think the next portion, Marcel, will be the short video montage that we have. It's a 20-minute video montage, which is essentially an extract, a condensed version of a longer video montage of an hour. So there's this the hour version will be made available, you know, for this interview. But I took some pieces of it, you know, and packaged something for a 20-minute just to give good visual, and so people can really understand what we're talking about in terms of radio interaction and sightings we're having and so forth. And so that will make the later part of the presentation
beautiful,
better. Okay,
beautiful.
So I'll just run, and if there's questions, I can pause if either you want to interject.
Okay.
We've developed something, Tejbar and a good friend of mine who lives about 20 miles away, Jimmy Blanchette, he developed a way to communicate with extraterrestrials using a radio telescope. And he has one in his backyard that's massive, 150 kilowatts.
Wow.
And it blasts. So he encodes a message into an audio file, and he aims it at the moon and blasts the moon, and that thing reflects everywhere. And we actually had him create a special message for the harmonic convergence. It's an image that he encodes in the audio message, and you can decode it with an audio analyzer right on your cell phone. I'll show it to you later. We have this up on the website.
And behind is my little tower and a huge antenna, which is pointed towards space right now. So it is very big. It's as big as my house almost. You can see behind, you know, the big palm trees, so it's a big antenna. And I have loaded up the message on the screen, and I'm going to transmit the message, a message of gratitude in this case, a thank you message. So the transmission is going to last about 15 seconds, and you will be able to hear the digital code going. All right, so we're going to start in a few seconds. All right, so transmission starting in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. already done. It's 2:16 in the morning. The radio is very active right now.
I'm pausing that for just 1 second because I want to add, preface this a little bit. We were planning a CE5 gathering in Big Arm, Wisconsin with about 25 people. Most of us did not know each other. 4 of us were going to do the training. And I was communicating with Jimmy at that point in time. And I said, would you be so kind as to put a message together? We're going to be heading out. And this is really the first time that we were going to use multiple radios in a big contact event. So I had some, Ricky Butterfast had his, Debs had hers, and I think another, Kimberly had hers. So we had multiple radios, the handheld radios. So Jimmy used his large antenna to transmit the message. And then we had our radios, and he picked a time and said, at this time, I'm going to send the signal. And then when we were in Wisconsin, we also used the audio recording that he put together that he sent us, and we played it. I played it on my radio shortly after Jimmy sent his signal, and this is what you're going to see what ensued.
And I should mention, just keep it paused for a second. This is when you first alerted me. We were at Mount Shasta, and that's when you told me about this event, and that's what got me interested. But you didn't give me the details. You just told me.
No, yeah, we still were.
You're still in top secret mode.
Yeah, Jimmy was still developing this. Okay. So we just transmitted Jimmy's message, and all 3 of the transmitters lit up simultaneously. We just got to the house. We're making dinner, and we are. Way over there. Is it going off right now? Yeah. Magnetometer is going off. So we are getting activity. Oh, magnetometer is going off the charts. Oh my gosh.
I have got.
Oh my God, this is really going off the charts. This is going off the charts. Look at that.
Whoa.
And you had no activity here when you walked here.
It was zero. It was flatlined all the way over here.
This is like it's peaking all the way, all the way, all the way.
It's going ooh, 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 ooh.
I couldn't even
Oh my gosh.
like it stopped me breathing.
Oh, bring your magnetometer here real quick, please.
Yeah, let's check and see what.
Let's just make sure that we're not picking up anything else.
Like those lights?
Oh my God. Put it right next to Kim's so I can see it. Holy, okay.
They're synchronized.
Oh my God, all four of them.
Oh my lord.
This is crazy.
Look at that.
We got response as soon
Thank
as.
you. As soon as
Thank
you
you
transmitted.
very much.
We love you. As soon
Thank
as you
you.
transmitted the message.
Whoa.
Fascinating.
Whoa, they're just signaling. Whoa, that's bright. Whoa, thank you.
I'm gonna pause here real quick. That craft came back all 3 nights. The very first night we had 38 flashes. It flashes 38 times. The third night, which is an incredible evening, we had 68 flashes from this one craft. And we used our radios the entire time in the field. This picture that you're seeing was taken by Jeff Sell, and I think you've seen this before, Grant, is he used his full spectrum camera where they remove the filter so it can take infrared and ultraviolet light in. And because we can sense this energy field behind the group, and we kept walking into that area, and many of us kept sensing this. We didn't know what it was, but we could sense a powerful energy field. He took this picture, and this is what was developed, or what the camera showed, is about a 14-foot force field, and next to it, and I'll keep going, is I'll pause right there, is this round, this dish-shaped object within the force field. If you can notice the outline here.
Wow. Yeah, I interviewed Jeff a couple times about this.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then whatever this is in the corner here, which is pretty fascinating as well.
Wow. Fascinating.
I have made a request for a day sighting if it is safe and appropriate. And so we'll see if they can make it happen safely.
Marcel, you want to pause on this quickly here, so I can give quick background on that experience. So I had created a message to requesting a daytime sighting, and 3 days later, this is what it just materialized over my house. Was sitting in my chair on a little table, and then I looked up, and all of a sudden I see this object, in the clouds. It was clearly not a plane, and but all I had was my my iPhone, so that's ended up being able to make some kind of clip of it. But that was the significant experience. Keep going, Marcel.
So we've got a lot of interactions already, and the group is getting set up for the night.
Oh, those are great. Do you have
And we've got,
Here.
Oh.
Yeah, I have a
see?
different,
so here we go. It's a beautiful sight. It's
I'm going to pause here just to preface this a little bit. We were setting up that evening, and if you see those boulders in the background, they're probably what, Jimmy, maybe half a mile, 3/4 of a mile.
3/4 of a mile, yeah, half a mile.
Below us.
Yeah.
We had incredible radio interaction pretty much the entire evening. We had crafts that were flashing across the sky, and I believe at about 1 a.m., you will see the picture here, and I have the video to show you, but a red disc landed somewhere here on top of this, and it was there for approximately 2 hours.
Mine's been going nuts.
Again, that's pretty incredible signals coming from the radio. It's not just, something you could be picking up, some static or some type of other, communication, because we're in the middle of nowhere, and this is a pretty rapid signal that's coming in.
Wow, it's very powerful.
Do you want me to pause until Grant returns?
Yeah, we should probably pause it.
Okay.
Maybe rewind it maybe a few seconds so it
Yep, I
doesn't
will.
miss the.
Yep. We'll take a temporary pause at this point and have a glass of water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but this evening, this event was absolutely powerful, because not only did we have the aerial contact, but we had the actual ground contact that came in. And then we also had, which you probably don't have on here, is the ET beings that interacted with Justice and Una and several of the other people at the time that the red craft landed. What I was saying, Grant, is that we had a lot of activity, radio activity, and shortly thereafter, when it was dark, we had a lot of aerial activity. We had crafts that were flashing us, and in that boulder that you saw earlier, about half a mile to 3/4 of a mile below the group, is where the red disc landed. And I'll show the video later, but Jimmy has, I believe, a picture of this here.
So
Yeah, and
we've got a
also
lot of
just one note, as you said, Marcel, this site again is a very remote site in Los Padres National Park. There's no human installations around, so no possibility of interference or anything like that. We had had broadcasted the message prior to this C5 contact event, had broadcasted a message again to invite the civilizations to join us, and so this is what happened. So keep going, Marcel.
Actions already, and the group is getting set up for the night.
Oh, those are great. Do you have
We've got,
Oh,
Yeah, I have a
You see?
different,
so here we go. It's a beautiful site.
You left your chair, Grant, but I want to point out, this is the boulder here that's about half a mile to 3/4 of a mile away from the group. And right about here, so we had a red disc land at about either 1 or 2 a.m. I don't recall now.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's
Mine's been going nuts.
wow, it's very powerful what's going on right now. So there's another one going up here.
Marcel, you want to pause this for a second here?
Yeah.
So we reckon.
So just want to point out here, as we see on that screen, there are 5 radios set up one next to each other. They are identical. They are set to the same frequency, and yet the non-human intelligence is capable of activating one radio independently from all the others with different pattern, different energy signature, which obviously breaks a lot of physics.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marcel.
And again, all of them are tuned into the same frequency. It's almost like having your transistor radios all on, 96.6 radio station, but yet everyone is being interacted differently.
They have different energetic signature.
There it is.
So that's the craft.
Wow.
And also, there are no direct roads going to this area, and it's a pretty treacherous climb up this boulder, because you're going to have people are saying, well, those are campers. If those are campers and that's a tent, if it's a half mile away, that thing would have to be the size of a circus tent.
Yeah.
And on fire.
Yeah, and on fire, right.
Yeah. And we had ground activity, Marcel, also you want to describe that?
Oh, yeah. So we also, during this event, and this lasted, I believe it was there, I'm close to 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half, and it was very late. What got our attention was some of the people were sensing something on the ground. So we left this area, we were witnessing this, and I have a plenty of recording of this, but we left this because other people were having experiences on the ground, and maybe another 30 yards from where we were standing, and we focused on going there, and we had actual ETs on the ground with small little beings, almost like, hiding, how a child hides behind a mother's leg.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of the same thing, and Justice was able to capture that on his camera, and it absolutely fascinated. We had it was so dark, we had the ISO up all the way, so it's somewhat pixelated, but you can definitely see the silhouettes of these ETs and smaller ET beings. And we interacted with them for quite some time, and when we returned back to this site, the craft was gone, but it was there a significant amount of time.
If you remember, if you've seen the videos I did of the 2014, 2015 Zendras at Mount Shasta, they were describing that as well, that there was the tall beings standing there, but then they kept describing these small, like little elf beings that were poking their head out from behind trees. Like they were peeking around the trees, and that they had what they described sort of like as iPads, and they called them the engineers. The Latino people were saying these are the engineers. They believed they were the ones that were keeping the Zendra open, but they described this to exactly what you're talking about, almost like they were playing games. They're poking their heads out behind these trees and hiding and stuff like that, and were very small beings.
That's fascinating, and that seems to be quite a common occurrence. Yeah. And even some of the expedition that I went with Dr. Greer, when he's really tuned in, and when he was out in Vidovic on the sand area, this little embankment, he was making contact. I didn't see anything, and he's has his arms spread, and he's out there for 10-15 minutes doing some type of communication. The rest of us are sitting in the circle, and we're like, I had no idea what he was doing. I was brand new to this, and he's out there just talking to the sand dune. And the next morning, or the next afternoon, when we looked at the video and the pictures that were taken, you can see where the pictures are his back, and all around him are all these little lights, all these little light beings, and these orbs. I mean, dozens and dozens. And what he told us that evening was that the ETs were bringing in their young ones to introduce them to the humans. And that's why he was extending like this and looking at the ground, is because they were curious and they were being initiated to humans, which is pretty fascinating.
Wow.
You have a video of that as well, Marcel, the light ship there?
Yeah, I can do that real quick. So this is the actual video that I took. 1:24 a.m. Let me make that a little bigger. And here's where I first noticed this.
Oh yeah.
I'll fast forward just a tad bit here.
I have goosebumps all over my body now.
Right on the ground over there, huh?
Yeah.
I'm turning up the ISO because it was so dark, and that's why you're seeing that greenish pixelation.
Yeah.
Is it the video now you're recording?
It went like this,
Yeah.
a light. It shot that way. Do you see that red thing in the center of the stone?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a disc landed.
Did anybody shine a laser?
No. No, nobody.
Okay.
Is it filming right now?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Yeah.
There's something out there, you guys.
Oh, without a doubt.
And then I think I'll show a daytime so you can see the differential. So there it is. So that's roughly where we saw that. Oh, I'm sorry. We were still with the
Video. Yeah.
with the video. I'm sorry. Uh,
There we go. Yeah.
That was it.
Yep. Not this one.
Yeah, I got to go back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay.
Yeah, here we go. So you can press pause a second, Marcel, on this one.
Sure.
So a brief one about this light being encountered. So this was the same location, and I could feel presence on the outskirts of the contact site where we were located. And so I was drawn to go there. So I was on my way to walk on the kind of ridge or the edge of the contact site, if you will. And that's where this light being was. A couple of seconds. I mean, it was pretty quick, but then I continued and I went forward, and I could literally feel beings in front of me, and I could not see them, but I could feel that presence very strongly. It's only after the fact we saw this. This was captured, by the way, by some kind of more coincidence, if you will. And looking at the footage after we saw it, so it was a good capture, but totally matched what I was feeling on there. That there were beings really all around us.
Wow.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Kaprowski, and I am standing on the rooftop of my building in Tokyo, Japan. Our contact group has been using the radio contact modality now for about 2 years with really great results. We use these two radios. This was our first radio. This is the Baofeng F8HP, and this radio we got just a few days ago, and this is also a Baofeng UV-S9 Plus. So get yourself a radio, give it a try. I think you'll be impressed by the results. So good luck with that, and goodbye from Tokyo.
Can you press pause, Marcel, a second?
Sure.
So I just wanted to point out also here that, so for all the years since 2017, I have been working closely with, a very small group of experiencers, very dedicated experiencers like Marcel. And so we kept, things pretty under wrap, but we were able to expand essentially the methodology and have multiple people use it and try it and validate that it works, validate the methodology all over the world of people from, again, we saw one from Japan here, Mark Kaprowski. We have experiencers in New Zealand, Australia, in Europe, of course, US, Canada, all over the world, the Netherlands. And so this radio contact modality has been validated throughout the world with the same results that we're seeing today. Experiencers have the same kind of experience, of course, with different variations, but same kind of experience all over the world. So it's not only us, it's not only me or Marcel, it's been utilized now by several people for several years.
Did you want to touch base on how those radios also have been altered? Or is that another segment that you want to discuss?
We will cover that in the slides. Okay. Yes, I will cover the technical aspect in the slide coming up. So this was on February. This is recent.
Oh, wow. If you could see this. They're going off. Yeah. So. All right. I'm going to stop it here.
you want to press pause, Marcel. So in the longer version of the video, this video montage, we see the whole story. There's a whole story about just the sighting we just saw. And so it's described in detail, overall several days. I had a lot of interactions with radio, but also sightings at a specific location. This was just a brief extract of it, but all the details of that experience are in the longer video. All right.
Hi, my name is Mark Sims, and I live in Ojai, California, and I have successfully made contact using Jimmy Blanchette's radio contact modality. The radio I used is this one. It's a Baofeng BF-F8HP, and here's what happened when I made contact. Encoded in this audio message is an image that includes a message and symbols and other information that you can see on the website thc2020.org/ce6. Here we go. So far, nothing. All right. Wow. Wow. I'm getting chills. This is amazing. All right.
Mark's the perfect guy for a commercial.
Yeah.
So this was press pause a second here, Marcel.
Sure.
This is a very important clip also here. This is from Linda Erorara. She is located in the Netherlands. She made a trip to Antarctica. I believe it was January, February of 2019. And she's part of our group, of contact group that we've had, we did a lot of work with radio work and, all these events we had in Rose Valley. Linda came as well there. So she's been very involved in our little group. And so anyway, she made a trip in Antarctica, and she was able to document, pretty impressive things. And, some of these things are related to the contact work we're talking about here. So go ahead, Marcel.
And just to add, Linda's footage, the videos footage that she have of her experiences are absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
They will contact her, they'll wake her up, and she'll say, okay, what do you want? It's 4 a.m., I'm tired. And she goes outside, brings her camera, and they'll come in and just say, okay, that's it. Can you do something? And they will come in at a certain trajectory, and then they'll split. They'll be going, they'll slow down, change direction. It is absolutely amazing the type of contact she has. And this has been going on for years and years.
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Linda Aurora. I'm from the Netherlands. I went to Antarctica in 2019, January, February, and took one of my radios with me. I have 3 radios. I know Jimmy for some years now, and Jimmy taught us how to work with the radios and the frequencies. We worked in a very small group. We are still working in a very small group, and see how the radios respond and what happens when you use the radios, or when the radios respond, what you can see. Sometimes you can see very fast UFOs flying over. In this next picture, I show you that something was flying from down, left, going to the right, in the middle, going up, and going all the way up to the left, and disappears. So I changed it a bit to show you how the craft or the UFO was flying. And all the same moment with the radios. So that moment that the radios went off, I took live pictures on my iPhone, and later on my computer or iPad I was watching it, and then I could see what was going on in the sky when the radios went off. So you have there's a lot of activity when that happens.
You want to press pause a second here, Marcel? So this experience was very significant. It happened November of 2020, so it's very recent actually. And this craft stayed above my position for over an hour and a half, literally. So I do have a ton of footage. I just had my iPhone 4, no, sorry, iPhone 10 with me, so it's not very sophisticated footage, but I have other good footage of it. And yeah, it lasted there for an hour and a half, and then at some point it started vanishing and dimming down, and then at some point I lost it, and I had to go as well. All right, Marcel, can keep going. Okay, so maybe we can go back to the PowerPoint.
Wow. Fascinating.
And so we talked about earlier the consciousness aspect of it. We saw in some of these videos these ships, making things like the flash, the one that produced this very powerful flash. Just to give an example of experience and connection that results out of this radio contact modality. So when the ship, actually, I was in my backyard. Most of these sightings actually occurred, for my backyard. At some point, I realized that I didn't need to go to very far to make contact. So I just stayed in my backyard, and they were coming to me above my house. And so this one showed up, was very, very bright, and as it was right at the zenith just above me, I mentally said 3 words. I said, "Flash at me." That's all I kind of formulated mentally, "Flash at me." And then we saw the flash that occurred on that video. So it shows how this phenomenon becomes very, very about consciousness and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to enter a little bit on a technical side, a technical aspect of this radio contact modality. So as we can see on the slide here, the TARP system, or the triangular array rotatable polarity system, the powerful one, in terms of its reach, will reach the entire solar system, and so and all the moons that are associated to it. So that means literally that the signal will physically reach these planetary bodies and go really far beyond the solar system. Now, in terms of the small handheld radios, what can we do with that? We know that when we're on the surface of the planet, we cannot communicate very far with that, maybe half a mile, or sometimes, if you get a clear view, maybe a few miles, but, that's typically what we're used for. However, when we get into space communication, things are very, very different. And that's, I think, where most folks out there probably don't have that technical background, is that in space, the signal will travel tens of thousands of miles. And so to give an example, the signal will literally physically reach the moon. If you go down 2 slides, Marcel will give an example of that. So a technical proof of that, here we go. So back in 2014, China sent a probe to the moon to do a round trip back and forth to the moon. It was called a 4M mission. And that probe, as we can see on the slide here, was equipped with a very small transmitter, a 1-watt transmitter, very low power transmitter with a very small vertical antenna, essentially mimicking what we have with a handheld radio, where we have a small vertical antenna and a very low power out. And as the probe was going to the moon and back, it was transmitting telemetry and messages, as we can see on that slide to the bottom left. These were decodes of the messages sent by this probe. So, and we were able, the amateur radio community was able to detect and decode these messages throughout the trip, even when the probe was at the moon, as far as the moon, with 1 watt of power. Right, so this is the proof that when we broadcast or transmit with this small handheld radio, some have 4 watts, 2, 3, 4 watts, it's even higher power, that the transmission will physically reach this distance, will physically reach the moon and beyond. And so, and we can just imagine, we're talking here about human technology, very backward human technology. If we talk about ET technology, who knows, how far they can decode these messages, even with a small handheld, and who knows if they're probably using, principles that are much more advanced, like quantum entanglement or whatever, 0 point, they may be able to get these messages, interdimensionally, literally. As soon as the information is broadcasted, that information becomes available. I made experiments about this, which were fascinating. One day I created a message, and in that message, which I compressed in a very short period of time, the message was compressed in about 1/10 of a second. So just a fast burst, just like that. Within that message was encoded a text, and the text was saying, if you can decode this, reply back to me, right? I'm paraphrasing here. Yeah. I was just curious to see if such a short burst message could be decoded. And incredibly, as soon as I transmitted, I let the push to transmit button go, the reply came back within a fraction of a second. So it was mind-blowing because, they got the message, decoded it, and acted upon it within fractions of a seconds. Really.
And that was with your handheld device.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Okay, so let's go back one slide here. So yeah, so this slide is important because that's the heart, you know, really in terms of to demystify, you know, how can you have communication with non-human intelligence with these small radios? Well, this radio will reach the moon, this signal. And so the voice of millions of human beings can be heard in space. And if there are more people doing this, the voice of all these humans will be heard in space very far. And one can imagine that if, you know, if we postulate that this planet is being monitored by non-human intelligence, that they may have technology or probes that are cloaked around the Earth or around the moon close, you know, these messages will reach, you know, potentially many civilizations, and dimensionally and interdimensionally as well. Next slide. Okay, this one. So yeah, so what we see here on this slide, you know, we don't need a lot of power, and as we just described, you know, this modality is really, you know, it's not. It's very simple to explain why these transmissions essentially are heard.
And also, if I can add, Jimmy, is the devices are great for transmitting, obviously, but also for getting messages, because you can use consciousness and thought is instantaneously. It'll travel across the galaxy or across the universe instantly. So if the intent is there and you can use thought, you can validate by having a response on your radio. Yeah. So even though these are small radios and they might only go a certain distance, in other words, you could piggyback it on your thought and send the message, and you will get a reply. Because I've done that several times, sending telepathic messages and getting responses on the radio.
Exactly, and as I mentioned earlier, when you have sightings, I had many instances where I made requests for either a flash or something very specific to occur, and it just occurred, right? So it's interlinkedly linked to our consciousness. Next slide, Marcel. So something that's really important here, and we get into a bit more technical stuff, the technical aspect of this. The interactions that are occurring on the radios so far, based on my research and the work that we've done, are not driven by regular electromagnetic radio waves. It's important to precise that. We broadcast radio waves. What we're getting back are not radio waves, at least not in the sense that we are used to. I've done many experimentations and many experiments to try to understand, demystify, and try to understand what's behind it. And clearly, we're looking at a very advanced technology or principles that are not known by our current science. No doubt about that. For instance, you know, when a radio is interacting, and we have a video of that, you know, we can, for instance, shield this radio from radio wave by putting it in a Faraday cage, for instance, and yet the interaction will keep going. You can take off the antenna even and put the radio in a Faraday cage, and the interaction will keep going. And so there are energies or powers behind it that really defies the laws of physics. There's a video, Marcel, about the microwave experiment. You want to put that on?
Sure. This one's I like this one.
Okay, so if we press the button here on the side, we get the regular radio. So here we go. And so the frequency 95.1, we'll turn up the volume, then we put it in a microwave. And the reason why we put it in a microwave is that the microwave has a Faraday cage. You see the door here? All this material is to keep the wave to get in and get out. So and now we lose the radio signal completely because the radio is inside the microwave, which is inside a Faraday cage. We open it and we get signal back. Here we go. So the radio is in a Faraday cage that is a microwave, and the interaction is still ongoing. So putting the radio in a Faraday cage
this is a microwave, and the interaction is still ongoing, despite the fact that the radio is contained in a Faraday cage, which does not let any radio waves going in or out. Okay, I put the radio, which is interacting right now, without antenna in the microwave. And the microwave is nothing less than a Faraday cage. And as we can see, the interaction is still ongoing. Again, the radio does not have an antenna and is inside the microwave, which is not letting any radio wave go in or out. As we can see here, the door has a material that prevents any radio wave to get in or getting out. And we saw that the radio was still interacting inside without antenna. Here we go. So this demonstrates again that these interactions are not driven by any conventional radio waves as we know it.
Okay, that's probably good enough, Marcel. And we saw that also with the in the video montage earlier. After transmitting the message to the Galactic Federations, we had 3 radios lined up and they were behaving completely differently. Again, if these interactions will be driven by regular radio wave, the radios will be doing the same thing. I mean, if you have 3 radios set to 95.1 or whatever FM frequency, you will hear the same radio station. It's not what happens with these radios and these interactions. The other thing also that's interesting is that, as I mentioned in my first contact experience, the radio had never behaved this way before, ever. I had used it for months and made a lot of communications with it. And only on the day and time of my first encounter, which I had requested, obviously, with the larger radio station, that the radio started behaving this way. It's also notice frequency specificity. So the reply, and I do have a ton of evidence of that in videos, that the reply comes back and the interaction is happening on the very specific frequency that was used to transmit the message to them. So they're kind of showing us they're replying back to that message through that same frequency. And as soon as they depart from that frequency, if we flip the frequency up or down just a little bit, the interaction stops. Another indication that, it's very a specific customized reply. If looking at, you look at typically, if you're dealing with an electromagnetic interference or noise, it's going to be broadband. It's going to be, it's going to be sloppy, typically broadband, kind of random. It's not what we're seeing. We're seeing very sharp reply on the very same frequency that we use to transmitting the messages.
Is there another thing that's specific frequency you use?
Well, the phenomenon, I will say, is not frequency specific. I have been using a frequency from the beginning, which I've kept honestly a bit confidential, so the work is not being interfered with, but it can happen on any frequency.
Are all the people around the world using the same frequency?
The small group that we dealt with or have been using this, yes, we've been using the same frequency.
Okay.
But there's the same people in our group has also switched frequencies because they had some issues in their part of in their country and have had continuous results.
Okay.
So we've altered from that frequency.
Okay.
The other thing that's interesting also, based on the research that I've done so far and input from other experiencers here, it seems that really, and again, it's a hypothesis here, but it seems really that the interaction that we are seeing are not that they are necessarily transmitting a message back to us in terms of an audio message or something. It seems to be a transfer of energy. And that's a completely different picture here, because the reason why I'm saying that is that you can have a radio, let's say here, that's interacting, and you have another radio here that's not interacting. And then once you touch the radio that's interacting, or the antenna of the radio interacting with the other radio, the energy is being induced into that other radio. And then that other radio will start interacting the same way as this one.
Right? You touch the radios together, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. I have videos of that. I don't have it here, and that probably, Grant could be a future discussion. I have a lot of material on this, but I have videos that shows that we can induce energy from one radio to the other, which should not be happening, right? Because a radio that's in the receiving mode should be receiving, should not be transmitting anything. The fact that it induced the energy means that there's an energy flowing, quantum energy flowing here, you know, that we don't know about, obviously, but it's much more profound. The mechanism of that interaction is much more profound than one can imagine. I've had also the opportunities I made special when I was, let's say, underground or under, sometimes you go under a bridge where there's a ton of concrete on top of you, right? I went to places where it was kind of shielded from, you know, interference and radio wave. Again, these interactions are not stopped or diminished or weakened by material. The material doesn't matter. You can be, you know, under 10 tons of concrete and the interaction is still going to take place. Other thing also that's fascinating is that, and this is new information that I have never released before. If we look, the radios after a certain period of time change, and as if they are modified, they start, more than half of my radios no longer transmit in the electromagnetic spectrum. So they've been altered in some way. They are, maybe they've been upgraded. I do not know technically what happened here, but some radio have no power output whatsoever anymore. And yet, if I transmit with them, I get a reply, and I get, and whatever I transmit in terms of a request, you know, often they will act upon the specific request. So they're clearly getting the transmission, although the radio is no longer transmitting anything. So. Yeah, so I think that describes, so this whole aspect, the technical aspect of it, again, is a very broad domain, or that we could spend more time. I have a lot of material on this, and again, I think that's probably could be part of a separate conversation at some point. Next one, Marcel. Okay, just a word on that. Obviously, you know, dealing with radio equipment transmissions, it's very important that the folks out there trying this technique ensure that, you know, they comply with the rules and regulation in their own country. The FCC in the United States here have different rules and regulation, a little bit than, you know, what you would find in Europe, for instance. They have different set of frequencies and things like that. So, you know, people doing this need to make sure that they're following the law and following rules and regulations. There's a ton of, go to the next slide, Marcel, there's several units out there you can purchase. You know, again, low power, but as we can see here, whether you have 2 watts or 5 watts or 8 watts of power, we saw in the slide earlier that with 1 watt, you're going to reach the moon. Your voice is going to physically be heard at the moon and beyond. So you don't need a lot of power here. And I think next slide. So next slide is probably one of the most important slide, and that's the last slide of that PowerPoint presentation. I'm sorry, the one prior to that, Marcel. Oh, transmission. Yeah, there's one that's called transmission modalities and types of requests.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, here we go. All right. So this is probably one of the most important slide here to conclude this presentation. We talk about modalities. I mean, some of what we saw earlier in the videos, you know, one can use Morse code, binary code. Some can use C5 tones that are already out there in the community. You can broadcast music as well. And again, one may be meditating and doing consciousness work and broadcasting music at the same time and so forth. There are many combinations, many possibilities here. Your own voice, I mean, you know, why not? You can use your own voice. Many experiencers have had experience just making a request with their own voice and they got a reply back. And the spectrogram. So the spectrogram, I'm going to spend a second talking about it. Maybe go to the next slide, Marcel. This is an example here. Go down. Where's the spectrogram? The message. We have the video of the.
I'm sorry. Okay.
We have an example of message and yeah, the video that shows. Yeah, so this is an example of message developed during the harmonic convergence that Mark Sims had organized actually in July 2020, or aware of that. So this is a message that was developed as to support this event. Now, how do we encode this message into a file, right? Because to make it practical, you want to have an audio file that you can broadcast with your radio. And so there's a software, and we're going to talk about it later. We've created a Facebook group here. We're going to give more information about how to do that and the technical details, but we use a software. I use a software to translate a picture like that into wave sounds. And so Marcel is going to show a video here how that can be done.
Is it, what was it
Yes,
called?
that's right. That's what's on C6 spectrum analysis. So we see the same image we just saw. Now converted into an audio file. Now, if you press pause a second, Marcel. So what we see here is actually a spectrogram analyzer decoding the audio file that was created, right? So this is actually, a program I have on my iPad, and anyone can download that on the App Store. It's called Spectrum View. It's a spectrogram analyzer, and so it takes wave sound, and turns them into a spectrogram, right? And that's what we see here. So the image we saw a minute ago, once it's being turned and converted into an audio file that we broadcast, but if you're a non-human intelligence on the other side receiving this audio, this is what you will get. Essentially, you will, just using a simple spectrogram analyzer, you will get that. So keep going, Marcel.
I have one here, so I don't know if it'll pick it up, so I'll play it. So, so mine's picking up the signal as well and analyzing, and that's what you're seeing. And now you're seeing on the screen just my voice. That's what's picking up. But obviously, you can see the actual message that was being broadcast in an audio signal.
Okay.
Right. All right. Let's go back to that slide. Okay. So this is the spectrogram. If we go back to that slide, the transmission modality and types of requests, this is an important slide here because
right here.
Yes, you know, this radio contact modality can be used to do things and accomplish things that are much more profound than, you know, just sightings and things like that. Obviously, we've had many contacts, and as Marcel mentioned, when we combine consciousness with this technological aid, if you will, that opens the door to a lot of things. I have personally experienced different aspect of this contact modality. For instance, the OBE here, it's mentioning OBE. Back in 2019, in the spring of 2019, I made a request, I made a message, and that request was essentially asking for an induced out-of-body experience.
Wow.
And in that request, I was also asking to not only have an out-of-body, but to be able to have a full memory, a physical memory, a recollection of that transition, of that experience. Okay. Essentially, that was the content of the message. So I broadcast that message during daytime. It was earlier in the day. And, you know, again, not expecting anything to happen. And then it was maybe 9 o'clock p.m. I was in my bedroom. I was fully awake and aware. My eyes were open, literally, and I was taken out of my body. My energy body was separated, and I had the complete memory of it, the complete feeling of this transition. And I knew at the moment when this happened what was happening. I knew they were acting upon that request. But you know, obviously, when you're at that state, you I guess think differently, if you will. So it's a different state. And I could see lights, and I felt, you know, just drawn into that light. And I was welcoming the experience. I was very positive, excited about it. It was a very positive experience. And after a few seconds, I blacked out, and then I lost everything. So I don't know what happened after. But what was requested specifically was acted upon. And this was a turning point for me in a sense. Although I had all these sightings, and many people in the community, and Marcel and others have had all these experiences, that experience was very significant to me, because I realized that, I mean, we know, number one, it's no joke. It's really, they are decoding precisely and acting upon very specific requests that are made.
Okay.
This is significant here. And I'm going to explain why. You know, because for instance, this opened the door. We talk about this Xendra and this portal, for instance, right? So we're using this radio contact modality. One could, for instance, indicate a location to have a portal open up or something, right? So that we can make very specific requests for very specific things. And if it is safe and appropriate, and if these non-human intelligence are on board with that, they will make it happen. I had also a healing experience where, you know, I've played a lot of ice hockey in my life in Canada, particularly in my young age, and developed, you know, quite some back pain, lower back pain. And anyway, I had an episode of pain a couple of years ago, and so I ended up going outside in the backyard with my handheld radio, and just using Morse code, I asked for help and asked them to relieve me from that pain. And that night, when I went to bed, that night, I had a lot of sweating, a lot of sweat, you know, as if you have fever, if you will. I was a very strange state. And the next morning when I got up, the back pain was gone. Now, you know, was it a coincidence? I can't prove it, obviously, but, you know, it was a noteworthy experience to me. Really, it happened.
If I can add to that, it's not a coincidence. I had a similar issue with a shoulder. I had about 10, 12 years of intense pain in my shoulder, and I went through a battery of tests, and they couldn't figure out some type of nerve damage. And it was really noticeable when I'm sitting in an airplane. It would be like somebody's taking a drill and just drilling into your arm. Severe pain. I lived with it for years. When we were having all this event in Big Arbor, Wisconsin, a lot of radioactivity, a lot of contact, and during a meditation, I asked if they could do anything to help me with this pain. Within 24 hours, it disappeared. And I thought, oh, wow, this is great. You know, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's in my head. I'm not feeling anything. It's never come back. I mean, that is empirical evidence. It does not go away. Something that's been there for over a decade, it disappeared. Wow. What happened? I couldn't tell you.
I'll have to try that. I was actually playing, if you've seen, I was playing with my shoulder as we were doing. I've had it for 5 years. Exactly what you're describing.
The only thing I can recommend is be very sincere and open when you're doing. That's all I did. I've asked for stuff in the past that didn't happen. This time I was really sincere, and my wish came true. And if this is opening the door to some type of healing, it's amazing. I mean, this would be just a change in how we, you know, how we heal ourselves and how we seek treatment.
This may be jumping ahead, but have we got plans, like with the groups and the people you're working with, to do experiments on this kind of stuff, like to trigger these types of events? The portal thing that really interests me, but like in terms of doing sort of an experiment to use more than just one person to see if we can use these modalities to do these kind of things?
There are many possibilities. Now, I mean, I went public with this really in February of this year. February 6, 2021 was the first time, and you were in the show, Grant. First time this came out. So this is early days. There's a lot of things that can be done, a lot of experiment that can be conducted. We are still kind of, you know, setting up and getting this movement going. But no doubt about that these experiments, you know, are doable, and it's just a matter of time that we're going to start expanding, and more people doing it. They're going to carry out their own experiments, and we're going to collect the data. And so we're going to learn more and more as we go along with that. It's still early days, but everything we've talked about, we have personal experience, whether it's healing, OBE, sightings, and so forth. We have good video evidence of it. So it looks like really I shouldn't use the expression, the sky is the limit. It's not that appropriate expression. It looks like there's limitless in terms of possibilities, considering that these non-human intelligence have technologies that are extremely advanced, not only on the technology side, but on the consciousness side as well. And so it opens up the door to so many things that we're not thinking about right now. And I think by engaging and putting the message out there and having more people trying and doing it, it's going to snowball, and we're going to learn more and open up more possibilities.
Yeah, and also, you know, I think we're going beyond maybe reaching extraterrestrial intelligence or non-human intelligence. When Stone Clifford passed away, I actually compiled a goodbye message the day after he passed. And, you know, actually, I might have it on the desktop. And for the entire day, I had incredible response on my radio.
Wow.
Oh, here's I'll just show you the actual picture of, and this is when I was in Laughlin, Nevada, and Lara was with me, and this is the only picture I have of Stone Clifford and myself, and she was there, and this is the message that I put together.
Wow. And the radio was going for the day. Wow, that's amazing.
It was nonstop. It was sitting here in my office by my side, and it was a radio that's been on my shelf for you know, a number of weeks, being very quiet. And when I sent that out, it became active. And again, not knowing what was going to happen, because we're kind of focusing on making contact with non-human intelligence, having the response, the crafts, UFOs. Here's something else, another modality. We're talking to us, you know, possibly a spirit, you know, someone that's passed, and having a response. So as you said, I think that, you know, it's wide open to what we can do with this type of.
And I can corroborate that as well. Maybe Marcel, we can get out of the PowerPoint. I think we're done. We can get back to regular video. I can corroborate. I did similar experiments as well. You know, and Marcel, we had a friend of ours, a good friend of ours that passed away. I had created a message to essentially ask for beings of light to facilitate and help, you know, in a transition and so forth. And at the moment that I transmitted that message, my radio went absolutely crazy and did something that I had never seen before. Was going extremely fast pattern, impossible to reproduce. And so there was clearly a reply. So yeah, and similarly with the healing, I've made also several messages over the years when I had friends or people I knew well in the community who were undergoing some health challenges, you know, made messages to ask for healing and help. And, you know, who knows, we don't know always if, you know, if there's something tangible that occurred, but we can say that all these people, you know, are okay today. So who knows, but clearly many possibilities there.
Wow. When my first reaction when I saw this in February when you first did it, but my reaction is to sit here and to say, like, I always call this like the Super Bowl. Like I'm sitting here watching the invention of the TV. I mean, it's like you're at the very beginning of this thing and you realize the potential of it. And to be so honored to be sort of at the very beginning to watch this thing as it starts to unfold. I'm just honored to see this, what you've done. It's just amazing. Have you had any other contacts, like you had the initial contact on the beach? Have you had any other contacts that indicate that you're being guided to do stuff? Because that's what I find is that you sort of get like synchronicities and little things that sort of move you in this direction, that direction, try this, try that, where you're getting guidance?
A good question. The answer is yes. There are things that I'm not ready to go in detail right now, but I can say that they are, especially many of things related to the technical aspect of it. There are many aspects in this radio contact modality, the way when I, you know, put it together and chose frequencies, that there's like a chance out in a million that it will have happened this way, right? Because you do some mathematical calculations, you end up with a number that's exactly, let's say, the speed of light, if you will, .0. And so how is this possible? It's chance in a billion. And I have proof of that. And I've not disclosed it yet, but yes, the answer is yes.
Wow. I think you showed one video. We talked to Marcel when we did the preview yesterday about this thing about translating the messages back. I think I saw one where you actually took the message that they sent and translated and got a message back. Have you done much of that, or is that just the one that you did?
I've done this. And actually, we should probably, there's an interesting video we should show Marcel. It's called White Noise. It's called Fast Burst Decoded. Fast Burst Decoded.
Yeah. Let me share the screen.
So yes,
the one I saw.
The energy signatures, I don't think it's the same one.
Okay.
I have not shared with Marcel this one. For
it's not the same.
purpose. the one I would like to show is it's called fast burst decoded. But I guess what I want to say is, before you play it, Marcel, I wanted to say is the interactions we're seeing through the radios, many of them contains energy signatures, we call, or frequency traces embedded in the transmission that can be identified using a regular spectrum analyzer. And so there's like a signature, a fingerprint on these different energy signatures. There's a number of different patterns that we have observed, myself and Marcel and others in the community have observed. And there seems to be, I will say, a finite number of energy signatures which are interacting. And these energy signatures have literally profiles, if you will. I was able, in the case, to decode some of these tones and frequencies. There were one of them I called the 8 tones. So I identified these frequencies. I recreated synthetically these frequencies using a regular app and ended up rebroadcasting these frequencies to the ETs using my handheld radio. And every single time that I broadcast these tones, the reply comes back with the same tones. So they're kind of, was changing the same energy signatures, if you will. I do have an example of that in a longer video that's going to be made available. And I've repeated this experiment, by the way, dozens of times. Again, broadcasting these 8 tones, and maybe a minute or 2 after getting a reply, which I recorded with my iPhone. So I've repeated this experiment over 40, 50 times, documented on video, and at every single time they reply back. So yeah, that's something.
And if I may add, it's a very clean message, and we use that to initiate new radios. It's kind of like breaking the radio. I broadcast Jimmy's cleaned up version of this just to get that radio broken in, initiate. It just seems to work. So thanks for doing that.
And so the video we're going to see here, what I want to show is that although we may not understand that there are messages, or the energy containing messages or information or just energy for a specific purpose, we'll see in this video how we can, for instance, embed a message in pure white noise, which will sound like static noise, but there's information, there's a message embedded in it. What you will see in the first part of this video, that message has been compressed in a tenth of a second. It's extremely fast burst. Okay. The little chit we're going to hear contains a full message.
Okay.
And after, what we're going to see in the later part of that video is that when we decompress the video, when we slow it down, then we can see the entire message, again, buried in the white noise, but we see what it is. And so this is a representation of what these bursts could be. When we see these radio bursts and interaction, each of these bursts may contain a tremendous amount of information, like a zip file that just needs to be unzipped to decode it. So go ahead, Marcel. So that fast burst contains a message we just heard. That. Now we're going to slow it down, play it again, but over a 30, 40-second period now. All right, and then again that same message. So this is a good representation here that we don't realize it, but even in these fast bursts, what I just heard, this little zzz, we have a full message embedded in it. Right. So this is a limitation, I guess, of our senses, but it's there, and so we're still working on it and still working on understanding this contact modality and the energies involved, and the indications also, Grant, are that, at least based on the information we have, my experiences and the input from the other people working with it, it really seems like the different radios, the different energy signatures are in fact different entities or different civilizations, if you will, which have their own technology. We see a variety of effects, if you will, that clearly from a technological standpoint, a technical standpoint, they behave differently. The way For instance, I was talking about some energy signature where you can induce the energy of one radio into another radio.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you can do that with some specific energy signatures, not all of them. Right? As if there is a consciousness or non-human consciousness technology specific to that energy signature that's behave in its particular way, and we have a different energy signature, it behaves differently. It's a kind of different, it feels like different technology, if you will. We have good evidence of that.
Also, what's fascinating, this has been happening for years, is they kind of eavesdrop on our conversations, because we will be kind of brainstorming something. He could be in the car, or I could be on my boat, or we just could be in our own offices talking, and we're trying to compile something, we're bouncing some ideas. All of a sudden we get a validation from the radio, confirmation. And this has happened to us, I can't tell you how many times, Jimmy. It's just absolutely
so many times.
Yes.
Yeah, every time I talk to Marcel, we talk about serious stuff, you know.
We're saying, hey, should we do this? What do you think? And all of a sudden, before he can respond, the radio is just going crazy. It's like, okay, I think that's a yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are they upping the ante as we go along? Are they sort of like, did it start simple and it's getting more complex and more sort of like they're leading you to bigger and better technology?
I will say the phenomenon that we observe with these radios is dynamic. Dynamic. It's not same thing that's stuck over. I mean, it changed over time. The nature of the interaction seems to evolve and change. And just to give an example, sometimes it feels like they are leading us to do certain things indirectly. Like there's an energy signature. Actually, the energy signature we talked about earlier, the 8 tones, you know, that I replicated and I broadcast back. Well, that energy signature morphed over time, where now when I have the radio clipped on me, for instance, if I push the radio closer to my bioelectric field, the intensity of the interaction increased dramatically. So there seems to be an interaction with our bioelectric field, and I feel when I push it, then the interaction is much stronger. And when I let it go, then sometimes I just lose the interaction. It kind of fades in the background. So it's like it's kind of pushing me to learn from that and push the radio against me, maybe again because it is a transfer of energy that's happening here that may have an impact on DNA or whatever. Who knows? You know what these energies are doing.
And we've experienced the same thing. A couple of people in our group, somehow, if you hang onto the radio or hold it very close to you, the interaction increases dramatically.
Wow. This is, as I say, this is just like watching the invention of the TV come up. It's just like absolutely. I guess you must feel honored to be sort of like, because you thought that at the beginning, like what you asked this question, like, what I was supposed to be doing, and it's sort of like this is your life purpose, like you were whatever, you made a pact to do this, because it's just completely amazing stuff. I just when I heard about it, even when I didn't know what was going on, I realized this is a very significant move, almost like they're putting steroids in the water, and okay, let's bring this new thing online here. We're not just going to do C5s and watch stuff in the sky. Let's bring the dancing bears out, and let's
open up Zendras.
Yeah, let's open up Zendras. I mean, I guess the good news is that it's, you know, the radio communication has been a passion of mine for all my life, and building antennas, and so it just kind of, it falls in, you know, it's a parallel path. Obviously it's different, but it's, you know, I'm passionate to do this work anyway. And now the contact work, since I started in 2017, obviously becomes, you know, it's life-changing. I mean, having this experience, you know, opens so much your mind, open your consciousness to what's out there and the possibilities. And so it's fascinating. And I think all of us who are doing this work are enjoying it tremendously. And it keeps evolving. As I said, it's not static, it keeps evolving. I don't know where that's going to end up, but I think if we can deploy this methodology and have more people try it and have their own experience, their own first contact experience on a smaller scale, if you will, well, if there's enough of us, enough voices being heard in space at some point, you know, that may open the door for a broader types of contacts, more towards open contact, right? Because now we have many people willing and being able to express themselves either through consciousness or through these technological aids like these radios. And so possibilities are limitless, really, as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. Marcel, you and I will be together in Illinois in August, and you're going to do the radio thing. Can you talk a little bit about that? We're doing for the Metaphysical Tribe conference there. Can you talk a little bit about what you're planning there with the radios?
I wasn't really planning on doing much with the radios except for having compiling a message and having Jimmy send some signals out, because that's kind of his forte. I was just going to talk about some of the contact experience that I've had and that we've had in our group, and just touch slightly on the radios. But it all depends on Jim. If he wants me to address and provide some information, I'll be more than happy to put a segment on that, because again, this is evolving, and I think it's going to evolve very rapidly now that Jimmy's come out, and it's the cat's out of the bag, so to speak.
Yeah, because you're doing a CE5 there at that event, aren't you?
Yeah, they want us to do let's call it a scaled down CE5 version. So they've asked us if we would do that, and then just talk about, they want us to do a very generic discussion on CE5 and show some of our past experiences, but not to get too deep into it.
Okay. One other thing, I'll talk to you off when we're shut down. I have an event. I was contacted by an intelligence that wanted to talk to me. I've had one conversation. It wasn't a direct trance thing, but Tuesday night I have an event. So I'll talk to you off the air. I'd like to maybe set up something to see what happens there. And I'm going to try to pass this on. Jimmy, I'm from Canada, and I have the contacts in the French community, and they've done articles on me, and they relay their stuff back to France. So I'll push it through there, and maybe we can get some stuff there. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be is going to pick up, unless people are totally stupid. I mean, sometimes I wonder, the stuff that's out there, and people just go back to the old stuff, and it's like, can't you see the significance of what's going on here? It's like, so I'm just honored to be part of this whole thing, because I mean, that was my thing, is contact modalities, and you guys are fitting right into this. That's I had this realization, and maybe it's synchronistic that we had this contact that Marcel told me about this at Mount Shasta, and it all comes together.
And if just in closing, if I could also add that I think that people need to take this serious, that this modality is to help you establish a relationship with non-human intelligence. I mean, this is your first contact, so act responsibly. It's not like, here's a radio and invite a bunch of friends, have some beer, and it's like a tailgate party. Yeah. Hey, look, we're communicate, really take it serious, because this is really a pivotal point for the individual to make contact. I just want to stress that this is not a game, it's not a Ouija board, and you invite people for that.
Do you think that experiencers would have better results, rather than people who say just heard about it and then quickly run out and buy a radio and haven't had any sort of contact experience?
I'll answer, and I'll let Jimmy answer. Yes and no. I think that the experiencers who are treating this in a different fashion, as opposed to being fascinated with what's going on, will probably have a more profound experience and a deeper type of communication with them. But that said, there's a lot of people that are brand new that somehow have this, I call it the gift of connection. They've never done it, turn this on, and all of a sudden they take over. Their activity is just really intense and profound. So I think that it can work both ways. If somebody brand new that's open to this will have incredible experience. If you're just there for entertainment, it's very likely that it's not going to happen until you reach a certain mindset. And that's kind of my take, and I'll let Jimmy respond to that.
No, I agree with what you're saying, Marcel. And I guess that's the beauty of it, the flexibility of it, in the sense that for those who are new to this, sometimes just having this first interaction, may be a life-changing event for them, and then they start doing more work and consciousness work and being open to it, and they're they're going to start to evolve on that path. And those who have more experience typically will think to combine this methodology or this modality with consciousness work, and then typically they will go farther in what they can accomplish, and things come up. And so, yeah, it's very dynamic, and I think it's open to everyone. And as Marcel said, I think people need to treat this very seriously. Again, the OBE experience to me was very significant, I realized how, specific and precise these, these non-human intelligence could act upon certain requests. And, so we don't want to, obviously do things that could be harmful or unsafe and things like that. So I always encourage, of course, the folks to take the proper precaution, to ask for help, ask for protection, ask for, positive, benevolent beings and things like that. It's important to do that. And there's one thing I wanted to mention also, which I forgot to mention at the beginning. When I did the first transmission in late April, and I had my first contact on May 1st, the binary code message that was transmitted, they essentially acted upon this request immediately. And it means that it seems to imply that all the energy and the transmissions that emanate from planet Earth are being monitored and decoded and analyzed in some way. Because how will civilizations just pick that signal that I had transmitted very specifically and acted upon it? I mean, there's such a cloud of radio wave emitted from planet Earth in general. I mean, it's millions of people with cell phones and radios, and we got all this smog, if you will, this fog of radio wave. Well, they extracted that one that I broadcasted, decoded it, and acted upon it. So the implications of that are pretty profound.
And that's because of the intent. Your intent was
well.
There. Yes.
Yeah, or if you're doing the telepathic thing, or you talked about the radio that wasn't really sending frequencies still working, it's this idea of non-local consciousness, that it may all be here now. There's no time, no space. It's all one thing, and they're in top of the whole thing, and we're just sort of clued out as to how it works.
Exactly, no doubt about that.
One of the things because I was kind of surprised when I interviewed Mark later on after the event in February, that he had talked about Tejbar was not an ET. He claimed he was from Earth. And it gives the idea that I think you brought up before, that you really don't know who you're in contact with. It, or maybe all sorts of like dead people, aliens, people who used to live on Earth, or higher realms that are all in the same field. And so how do you distinct because you mentioned certain species? How do you distinguish who you're actually talking? Have you ever been able to distinguish? Because you talked about getting a certain I think it was the Syrians to flashback or something. How do you determine who you're actually talking to?
Well, there's sometimes it's just, how would I say that, feelings. I do have, I do have videos of contact work that I've done. Most of the time, I did contact work alone, to be honest. The group that I intended to set up early on, it was, it's hard because you want to bring people and not everybody can, or I didn't have much time to manage a large group and things like that. So I ended up doing most of my contact work by myself alone. And when you start establishing a relationship, it becomes very personal. It becomes a very personal thing. And in one case, I do have the full video of that, actually, that I can provide. I got to a site, and well, actually the same site that we saw on a video earlier in Rose Valley, California, in Los Padres National Park. And I often record, use an audio recorder when I do contact work, and I let it record because there are things happening. And so after the fact, I can, use that information. And I felt very strongly that there was an Arcturian ship that will be manifesting itself and will be producing flashes and will signal me. And that's the strong feeling I had. It was around 9:00 p.m. And so I verbalized it on the audio recorder, because when these things happen, I kind of, verbalize it. So it's on the record. If something happens, it's good to have. So I verbalized it. And an hour and a half later, exactly what I had foreseen, that Arcturian ship just materialized and started flashing. And I have that on video. The ship flashed, never stopped actually flashing. It was fairly stationary above me. And it flashed for over an hour and a half nonstop. Every 11 seconds, it produced a flash. I have the full video of this. I made a video montage of it. Every 11 seconds flashed. And the flash became quite intense at some point. And so when I have this experience and I feel that it's, let's say, an Arcturian ship and beings will produce that, and the sighting actually occurs, well, I make the assumption here that it was really that because I kind of predicted the sighting, right? So that, do I have absolute proof of that in some cases? Not always, of course, right? I'm not on their ship. I'm not necessarily seeing the beings, but they all experience like that really are pretty strong and clear. So there's no doubt about that. So that's
now we're going to link a video. You talked about linking a video. Can you describe what's in the 1 hour video that we're going to link?
Yes. So all these experiences that have been collected over the years, you know, was my experience, but also collected some testimonials. We saw some on the 20 minutes video earlier. That 20 minutes was just a condensed version of that longer version. That longer version has more material. It's the experience that we saw in the 20 minutes are more defined. As you know, there's kind of longer videos in that hour. So it's experience, sightings, other people's experience, testimonials, details about the radio contact modality. So it's really a compilation, if you will, of clips, video clips. Most of them were just taken with my iPhone or Marcel's iPhone when he was in, you know, over there. So it's an amateur type of, you know, mini documentary, if you will, but I think is a good collection of experiences and testimonials, which will give a very good idea to the folks out there what can be accomplished with the methodology and what kind of results you can expect.
Wow. Well, I'm pretty excited. And I guess if we look at synchronicities that I've been dragged into 3 or 4 times now, so I guess I have some role to play. So I'll play my role and move it where as much as I can and try to tell people like this is important stuff. If you realize what's going on here, this is a big step. This is almost like we're being moved to the next level to understand what's actually going on. And I appreciate
absolutely, and thank you, Grant. Thank you for you know, taking this seriously and allowing us to share this message. It's important, and your voice is extremely important, and honored and very, very grateful that you know, you're allowing us to speak about this. The video we talked about earlier, the 1 hour montage, if possible, we can edit it in this interview at the end. We can just insert it there so people can access it directly.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. I truly appreciate that. I appreciate that you're interested in this and getting the word out. We also created a little Facebook group site called Beyond the Signal, establishing a personal relationship with extraterrestrial beings. And we hope that this little platform will allow people that are new or even people that are experienced to share and exchange information. So we can put the link on that as well.
Okay, and maybe I'm just popped into my head. Sometimes I have experiencer groups where I can pull in a lot of people who are experiencers. Would you be willing to open to a panel where I put it out and then people who want to can come on a panel where you just sit there and answer questions from people?
Absolutely, I would be happy to do so, to participate to that. Absolutely. Okay,
because I have had a group of experiencers where I've opened it up. I used to call it rabbit holes, where a lot of people want to tell their story. They've had experiences and stuff. They got no place to go. So I just open up the line. I've had 70 people on Zoom at one time. And it just, so a lot of times they're looking for this kind of stuff where, you know, they actually get to talk to people who are doing it. So that was one of the things I thought of. But the main one I'll talk to you off the line is about this thing on Tuesday that it's kind of weird. I've had 3 different messages from beings, and each of them turned into a book. So I've got another one here that's going to happen Tuesday night. So I want to touch base with that. But I'm absolutely honored to have been part of this story, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Grant, for sponsoring this. Really appreciate it. You know, and you know, it's the journey continues. I think we're in for an amazing ride.
Beautiful. One last question before we go. What is your neighbor? What do you think when you have these big giant antennas? Does he sort of look over and say, "What's going on here"?
Well, at some point, at some point, I had these antennas on top of my house, on the rooftop. And so it's like, I just had 2 at the time, and they were so huge. I mean, it's everybody was stopping in the street to look at that. The kids were like, "Look, Pop, Mom, what's this?" You know, so yeah, it gets a lot of attention, but now I put it down in the backyard, so it's kind of a bit, you know, more hidden, but
they'll think you're working for the CIA or something like that. They're in our what are they doing? Thank you very much, gentlemen. As I said, I'm honored to have been a part of this.
Thank you so
Grant.
much, Grant.
Thank you. And thank you,
Marcel.
Jimmy, for everything.
Thank you, Marcel, so much for your help.